Welcome back to Online Classroom Biology, Nick McManus. This is our last section for chapter 24 and our last section for plants. So, this will cover all and the final information that you will be quizzed on and then tested on if we ever come back to society. Two objectives. It's not a large chapter. Large section. It is pretty short. But there are two objectives. Identify the major food supply crops for humans. So we'll be looking at it worldwide as well as the U.S. and describe how humans benefit from plants. Okay. So keep those in mind as we move along this section here. And let's first take a look at what agriculture is. Pretty much, this is a business side of plants. Is production of crops in order to sell and eat. So we want to take a look at worldwide patterns here. And really, the bulk of those come from just a couple of crops being rice, wheat, soybeans, and corn. And of that, 80% of the United States make their crops or their agriculture is based on corn, wheat, soybeans, or hay. Now, in the United States, a little interesting fact about corn is we only have one type. So, if that was to ever develop some sort of fungus or bacteria or some sort of bug pest that comes in can wipe that out, that is going to be a huge problem. Just south of the border in Mexico, they have 7 different types of corn. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Think back to that of the graphing and things like that, the asexual reproduction of plants, and the reason we have that, mainly selective breeding. So most of these are, so that way they can grow fast and produce a lot. Okay, so that's the worldwide. It comes from pretty much not too much uh, different crops. You have a lot that are the same: rice, wheat, soybean, and corn. One thing to understand about these crops and how it got there is this idea of selective breeding. So, selective breeding is similar to that of artificial selection. And that's simply what you are doing is you're taking these traits and you are going to make them better. So you're picking ones that you like and you will try to reproduce those traits. That's why you see here this corn. That is why we only use one type of corn, and that's because those traits we have selectively, or farmers and agriculture industry has selected as the best traits. So therefore, we use those traits in order to farm. Okay, and that has, like I said, had led to the modern day crops. I do want to talk a little bit. I found this interesting that potatoes were discovered in the Americas, but when we think of potatoes, okay, we think of some sort of, either American country type dish, but also it is a staple in Europe. So you have a lot of staple in Europe. You have, I know the Irish came over and migrated over to the United States during the Great Potato Famine in Ireland, as well as it is a staple in German dishes and the United Kingdom as well, but was found in the Americas. This here I want to talk about is the Green Revolution. This idea of pushing to uh, a capacity of to end world malnutrition. So what they did is mainly they started using artificial fertilizers, and it's interesting to think here because this happened in 1950, 1970s area of timeline, and what they did is they pushed towards an artificial fertilizer, that being a high composition of potassium, nitrogen, and phosphorus. So those three chemicals are used a lot in plant growth. Okay, so those being high in that, and actually has a, it's kind of like motor oil, like a 10W30 Well, those numbers of the fertilizer represent the nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus levels. So those you can understand as far as how much is located in the fertilizer. But now, if you compare the green revolution, this idea of artificial fertilizer, to that of what is happening now is more of a natural fertilizer. These natural fertilizers being that of manure and compost and things like that. This artificial fertilizer being the pebbles and the pellets or the miracle grow that you would typically see. The process of this is to just produce rapid growth, which would make sense if you're trying to end world malnutrition. But now, what happens is you have pests and things that are building immunities and to these artificial fertilizers. So it's going to cause a problem, and also health benefits that they weren't necessarily, there were no longitudinal studies done for these artificial fertilizers. Now we are seeing a trend more towards natural fertilizer, or what we call organic. So if you look at the grocery store, organic is going to use natural fertilizer versus artificial fertilizer uh, in order to grow it. And organic, as you know, is quite a bit more expensive. As far as how do other ways other than food, how does plants help us? Well, fiber, okay, as one, wood, and medicine. These are raw materials that plants are going to produce, and we use those raw materials in different ways. The shirt that you are wearing, hopefully, um, that is made out of fibers. Okay, so those are cotton, wool, things like that that are going to be spun together and put together to make a shirt. The desk that you are sitting at, or table or chair you're sitting on, most likely is made out of wood, which we learn is the stem, the trunks of trees and woody plants. Those are going to be used. Here you have a structures being built by wood, as well as furniture, other things as well. And then a huge, huge, huge thing as far as corporate America and really business wise is medicine. Plants provide a lot of different properties that are used to help aid ailments, so sickness, supplements, things like that. And you pretty much just grind the plant up and extract the different qualities that you would need from that, and that's why you see Advil here, and that's also why you see a lot of deforestation, because they're looking for stuff that we quite have not seen yet, and possibly could help cure certain things. So this kind of goes hand in hand, taking out forests to try and help. So there's moral and ethical dilemma that is dealt with that. All right. So that is it. That is humans and plants and how they coexist. So food and raw material. Welcome to the online atmosphere, and best of luck on your quiz/test.